Hello everyone, my name is Art Russell. Welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to share some content which, if applied, can help you achieve some real, practical results in your life. The content is related to deliberate thinking and the importance of our word. So let's begin. The key to understanding the law of attraction or the law of assumption is to have an understanding about enlightenment, which is basically defined as waking up from the dream of personhood. I know this sounds strange, but it's more easily understood through the analogy of a nighttime dream. During a dream state dream, it seems that your character within the dream is awake, doesn't it? But when you merge once again with waking state reality, you realize that the character and all of the events within the dream was made of consciousness. That same rule or understanding applies here within the waking state reality. This is very important to understand if you desire to use the law of attraction, which is always functioning, always working in your favor. To help us dive deeper into this subject, I'm going to read some quotes from a book entitled The Master Key System by Charles F. Hannell. I discovered this book many years ago, and please trust me, it took a lot of reads for me to begin to get some of the deep messages that are contained within it. So let's begin. Here's the first quote. We live in a fathomless sea of plastic mind substance. This substance is ever alive and active. It is sensitive to the highest degree. It takes form according to the mental demand. Thought forms the mold or matrix from which the substance expresses. Now, of course, what he's talking about is consciousness. In this paradigm of reality, we begin and end with consciousness. In other words, consciousness is what is real. Here's the next quote. The law is that thought will manifest itself in form, and only one who knows how to be the divine thinker of his or her own thoughts can ever take a master's place and speak with authority. So he's stressing the importance of choosing our thoughts deliberately, which is opposite to what many beings do. Here's the next quote. All things have their origin in mind, and appearances are the result of thought, so that we see that things in themselves have no origin, permanency, or reality. Since they are produced by thought, they can be erased by thought. Now, when we contemplate a dream state dream, what Charles Haanel just stated certainly holds true, doesn't it? Things have their origin in mind. All of the characters, all of the events and circumstances within a dream state dream had their origin in mind. To apply the law effectively, we have to understand this in the waking state reality. And the next two quotes. All great things come through recognition. The scepter of power is consciousness, and thought is its messenger. And this messenger is constantly molding the realities of the invisible world into the conditions and environments of your objective world. And the next quote, thinking is the true business of life. Power is the result. You are at all times dealing with the magical power of thought and consciousness. The next quote comes from this book, or actually one of the books within it. This is a collection of works by Neville Goddard, who was a Barbadian-born mystic who moved to the United States, and where he later wrote many books and lectured about the nature of consciousness, which is our essential nature, and deliberate manifestation. I've just got one quote to read from this book today. Here it is. There is a strong analogy between a spoken voice and a mental voice. To think is to speak low. To speak is to think aloud. I'll just read that one more time. There is a strong analogy between a spoken voice and a mental voice. To think is to speak low. To speak is to think aloud. In other words, he's stating that there's a strong relationship, that contrary to what many believe, our thoughts aren't inconsequential. They're actually forming the basis for our apparent reality. Now, I'd like to tie this into the title of this video about the importance of our word. To many of us, from the perspective of the person, we are sometimes not very precise or careful about choosing our thoughts and our words. Now, what I'm stating is that this works against us. Years ago, I didn't know this, and I was highly reactive. Not all the time, but definitely sometimes, as I'm sure may be familiar to many of you. From the perspective of the person, we sometimes think, oh, our words don't matter. What does it really, what's the difference? And the same about our idle thoughts. And what I'm stating in this video is that it's very important to govern ourselves from the perspective of awareness, as consciousness itself, from our I am nature. The next quote comes from a book that actually inspired The Secret. It's entitled The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. Here's the quote, which relates to our essential nature. No thought of form can be impressed upon the original substance without causing the creation of that form. A human being is a thinking center and can originate thought. So that's one of our powers. That what we're holding in thought, and that the words that we're using are either working for us or against us. If we don't know how the system works, we may apply or live our lives as though what we're thinking and speaking doesn't really matter. And that's not the case at all. Be very careful with your words. The next information comes in the form of a few Bible verses that I've chosen. And I've chosen them not because I'm a Bible scholar or anything like that. I've chosen them because this knowledge was known in ancient times and it's been forgotten. I'm hoping to demonstrate that our words are very important along with what we're thinking. I'd also like to make a note here that there's a gender bias which was sometimes used in ancient language, but that I certainly don't have any gender bias in my channel. This is open to male and female, and however you may feel comfortable with describing any of your personal life. I want to be inclusive here, and I am. The first verse comes from Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. Now that's quite the opposite, isn't it, of what we're fed on a daily basis through the media. Not all of the media, but a lot of mainstream media is about negativity. It's your choice, but this is not harmless content. Bob Proctor used to say, I don't care whether you're thinking about getting into debt or out of debt. If you're thinking debt, you're creating it. You're basically asking for it. Whether you're thinking of getting into debt or out of debt. So when we watch violence or negative situations as though they're being decreed by media, as though this is an inescapable fact, it's up to us to choose whether we leave that channel on or turn it off and attune ourselves to something positive. The next verse comes from Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 2. Do not be rash with your mouth, and let not your heart utter anything hastily before God. For God is in heaven, and you on earth. Therefore, let your words be few. Now, I'd like to make a statement here about let not your heart utter anything hastily. In this verse, your heart is considered the essence of your nature, your beingness. So, when you still yourselves and go within, think of whether you would like those thoughts or words made manifest as apparent reality. If not, choose something positive. And at the end it says, let your words be few. This is kind of tied into that old expression about if you can't think of something good to say, don't say anything. Now, it doesn't mean to be a doormat. It means to search for the positive, or at least don't react in that old way of letting the more base programming related to the person take over. Live from consciousness, your spiritual center. The next verse is from Proverbs chapter 21, verse 23. Those who guard their mouths and their tongues keep themselves from calamity. Calamity, disaster. If you're going through a challenging time or event, dive deep and see if there's something positive that you can embrace. And state it in the I am now wording. I am now bringing better health into my reality, more wealth into my reality. Every day I am getting better and better. The next verse comes from James chapter 1, verse 19 and 20. It's actually two verses. So then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. For the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Now, a word about righteousness, which can be off-putting to many, as though we're pretending to be these saints. I'd like to bring up the quote from Neville Goddard, the mystic that I referred to earlier. He defined righteousness as righteousness is the consciousness of already being what you want to be. To sin was to miss the mark, to miss the center of what we're really aiming for. And we aim with our certainty and our thinking and our words. And we'll see that our actions will follow when we embrace a new positive way of being in the world. This is not hollow. I'm seeing it work in my life, and I have even before I understood this to the degree that I do now, but I still applied it. I knew that telling myself a negative story was not helpful in any way. It doesn't mean to suppress that events have occurred, but when we dwell on them, we're basically saying, cycle this, I'd like some more of this. I'd like more positive. I am generating more positive results. The last verse is from Isaiah chapter 55, verse 11. so shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. So our words will not return to us void. Some think of this as a boomerang thrown, which returns to us as effects in the waking state reality. What would you have to lose by giving this a try for 30 days? Governing your point of awareness and thinking and speaking from the center of your being, your essential nature, which is consciousness. So I've made a note here just before ending this video, how to apply this. Live from your spiritual center. You're a divine center in infinite living mind. What we embrace, whether positive or negative, the thoughts we entertain, the words that we entertain, will manifest in our apparent reality. This is our power to choose. I hope this content has been useful. If you've enjoyed it or found it helpful, I invite you to share, subscribe, and like. More information is available through my free articles at thinktwice.me and also through my book entitled This Taste of Flesh and Bones, available from Amazon. Thank you very much for watching. I look forward to seeing all of you again soon. Bye for now.